I'm Liz Faublas, and this is Currents. Tonight, the nation awaits action by the United States Supreme Court on big cases about same-sex marriage. Also, a message of joy, the message of the little flower. And Scouts Honor, we attend the celebration of Catholic Scouting in Brooklyn.
It was a tremendous experience for me to grow with friends, to have examples of adults that were really worthy examples. I mean, really fine men who taught young people how to be mature adults.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Our nation is awaiting action by the U.S. Supreme Court on two important cases involving same-sex marriage. The Federal Defense of Marriage Act and California's Proposition 8 both say marriage is between a man and a woman. Both are being challenged. The Supreme Court justices back at the court today after vacation will decide. Maggie Gallagher, co-founder of the National Organization for Marriage, spoke with me about what could be a landmark decision. Maggie, as we've been discussing, the Supreme Court has a list of lower court rulings which it reviews. That we know. They're essentially looking at two separate cases right now. Let's take them one at a time for this interview. In the simplest terms, the Supreme Court addressing the question, does the United States Constitution require a redefinition of marriage to include same-sex couples? Now, that's number one. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the answer is obviously no. The founding fathers would be turning over in their graves if they imagined that the Constitution, or Abraham Lincoln, it will probably rest on the 14th Amendment, if they thought that our federal Constitution takes away from the people and the states the right to define marriage as the union of one man and one woman. It essentially would be a statement that marriage, as we've known it throughout time and history, is irrational and rooted only in hatred and animus towards gay people, which is not true.
Okay, and we're going to broaden it out, obviously, taking a look at challenges to the Defense of Marriage Act and California's Prop 8. They're trying to take a look at those in their first listings of lower court decisions.
Okay, well, the first, let me just say the first,
sure.
What's at stake in the Prop 8 case is really the question of, does the federal Constitution require gay marriage? Now, there are those who will tell you that somehow the circumstances in Prop 8 are special or narrow, but really it's a one-sentence constitutional amendment passed by the majority of people in California just a couple years ago that says literally marriage is only a marriage between a man and a woman will be valid or recognized in the state of California.
Okay.
So the Prop 8 case really is a referendum on whether or not we are now going to live in a country that our Constitution requires gay marriage in all 50 states, and the vast majority of states that do not recognize gay marriages are acting against our federal Constitution. The DOMA cases are a little different because they're about whether the federal government is entitled through Congress to pass its own definition of marriage or not, something that I personally believe was settled in the 19th century when the federal government acted to prevent polygamy in the state of Utah, but which lower court judges out of Massachusetts, I think it's the First and the Second Circuit, are saying that Congress doesn't have that right, and if a state recognizes gay marriage, then the federal government also has to recognize it as a marriage for federal purposes.
And Maggie, I want to get your opinion on this. In about a half a dozen cases, there have been some successful lawsuits on behalf of gay couples who got married where state law allows them to, but they just can't receive federal benefits like pensions, that go to other married couples. Now, in some cases, people have been left in debt. They've been left homeless, battling to keep adopted children. Now, these are challenges no one should really have to face.
Adopted is not, you've lumped together so many things in law. It's interesting to me that I doubt there's a single person who's homeless because of federal marriage laws being one man and one woman. And if that's true, then people have really done some bad estate planning. And I don't think that it's true at all that adoption is going to be affected by DOMA. DOMA doesn't regulate adoption.
But based on the cases reviewed and reported, I mean, this is what they say.
I don't think so. I think
I'm just going exactly by what I've read in my research, and I just want your opinion on that. Let's just say that this is the case.
My opinion is that it isn't the case, and so I can't sit around and answer to a hypothetical that isn't true. I think that if there's a problem that people have not done proper estate planning, let's go to the question of estates, right? you have a federal tax exemption of $5 million. So if you're not getting the estate benefit that's given to married couples, you have $5 million in your estate. That's nothing to do with marriage. That's individual. So you're talking about a very tiny group of extremely wealthy people. And in terms of the individual cases, you'd really have to show me the individual cases if you want me to respond to them. But I don't think it's generally true.
Okay.
That
we'd certainly definitely be happy to do that.
I know it's not true about adoption law, which is not governed by federal marriage law. What you may be saying is that people who didn't go to the trouble of getting a second parent adoption, which is the strongest protection if you're going to have a non-traditional family and you're not the biological parent, and we're depending on their marriage to protect them in other states, they could get into problems. And I think the answer to that is that if you're not a biological parent, you really should go through the second parent adoption process because it will be recognized in all 50 states.
Okay, well, fair enough on that, Maggie. We're about 6 weeks from an election that, according to just about any poll you consider, is really too tight to call right now. Now, you've said in the past that President Obama announced his stance on gay marriage, that we now have a clear choice between Romney and Obama. You say you look forward to demonstrating in November that it's a bad idea for a national candidate to support gay marriage. Your stance still remains on that, and what will we be seeing in November from you?
I think this is going to be helpful to Romney, and I think it's going to be hurtful to President Obama, especially in the swing states. We're already seeing it affect President Obama's polling in North Carolina, which he won in 2008 by 15,000 votes out of 4 million cast in a state that's 20% African American. And you're seeing major pastors indicate quite a lot of discomfort and upset.
Where do you see the courts or the legislatures going on same-sex marriage?
Well, I think we've seen the majority of courts have rejected the idea that there's a right to same-sex marriage, and we've seen the unanimous opinion every time the American people have been asked their opinion. So we'll have votes in 4 more states. Perhaps one day, gay marriage advocates will be able to win an open and free election. But to date, the majority of courts and the majority of people reject same-sex marriage. They're not marriages, and there's no reason the law should treat them like marriages.
All right. Thanks so much for your opinion, Maggie. Thanks for joining us today. Have a good one.
Take care.
Next, the president at the UN and the rest of the day's headlines as Currents continues. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Liz Faublas. The eyes of the world are focused on the Middle East today as leaders take to the podium at the United Nations in New York to address the General Assembly. President Obama says the current religious violence in the Muslim world must end, and the anti-Muslim film blamed as the spark must be rejected.
I have made it clear that the United States government had nothing to do with this video, and I believe its message must be rejected by all who respect our common humanity. It is an insult not only to Muslims, but to America as well. For as the city outside these walls makes clear, we are a country that has welcomed people of every race and every faith. We are home to Muslims who worship across our country. We not only respect the freedom of religion, we have laws that protect individuals from being harmed because of how they look or what they believe.
And the president added that he believed a nuclear-armed Iran is a threat to Israel and the entire globe. He says the U.S. will do what must be done to stop Iran. Meantime, Iran's President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad now is offering a new explanation for his threat to wipe out Israel.
If a group comes and occupies the United States of America, destroy homes while women and children are in those homes, incarcerate the youth of America, impose 5 different wars on many neighbors, and always threaten others, what would you do? What would you say? Would you help it? Would you help that entity? Or would you help the people of the United States? So, when we say to be wiped, we say for occupation to be wiped off from this world, for war-seeking to be wiped off and eradicated, the killing of women and children to be eradicated, and we propose the way. We propose the path.
Ahmadinejad says his path includes a separate state for Palestine. And the president of Pakistan is condemning the burning of a Lutheran church, a school, and a bishop's house in his country on Sunday, calling the attacks un-Islamic. The violence is being blamed on that anti-Muslim film. The World Council of Churches is calling on Pakistan to end the abuse of the country's blasphemy law. The council says current practices lead to the violation of the rights of religious minorities. Meanwhile, a Coptic Christian man is under arrest in Egypt for posting the anti-Muslim film online. The man is being charged under Egypt's blasphemy law. He will stand trial next Wednesday. Also in Cairo, residents are taking to the streets to protest against the country's new president. The complaints are that President Mohamed Morsi has not done enough to improve life in the city or protect its citizens. Of particular concern, the killing of 16 Egyptian soldiers by Islamists in the Sinai Peninsula. A leading newspaper editor says the Sinai has become a haven for extremists flooding into Egypt from other countries in the region. The Sinai is also the route for thousands of refugees fleeing the violence gripping the Middle East. In the desert, one woman, simply known as Sister Aziza, provides an oasis.
You see how they tortured him?
And that man is suffering burns and whip marks. Sister Aziza and the organization known as Physicians for Human Rights have set up a free clinic to help the migrants. Many of the refugees fall prey to Bedouin gangs who traffic in people and extort money from them. Sister Aziza's good works are known throughout Africa, and earlier this year, the U.S. State Department honored her with an award. Africa's Christians are now outpacing the continent's Muslims. New figures from the Center for Studies of New Religions say that 46.5% of the African population is Christian, 40.5% are Muslim. The group says in the next 10 years, the largest number of Christians in the world will be found in Africa. And in the African nation of Somalia, progress is being reported in the fight against the Islamist terrorist group Al-Shabaab. About 250 young fighters are splitting from the terrorists and joining forces with the government. The country's capital of Mogadishu is seeing an increasing number of terrorist attacks. On Thursday, 22 people were killed in a suicide bombing at a restaurant. The Somali president was also targeted for assassination recently, but survived the attack. Well, the world's largest Muslim country, Indonesia, is now taking steps to force Catholic schools there to teach Islam. District leaders in Central Java are calling in Catholic representatives and warning them the schools could be closed if they don't start offering Islamic courses. Back in this country, a new list of the best Catholic high schools in the U.S. The Cardinal Newman Society's ranking of the top 50 include 3 in New York, among them Cathedral Prep Seminary in Elmhurst. The other 2 in New York are All Hallows in the Bronx and Montfort Academy in Katona. The schools are honored for their excellence in Catholic identity, academics, and civic education. Well, for many students, learning a new language means taking a new path. And as we learned from Rome Reports, one path includes a video game.
There are many ways to learn a foreign language. Some take classes while others may choose to immerse themselves in a foreign culture. There's also the popular option of taking online courses from your home computer. A new video game is aiming to combine some of these methods on their computer game called the Spanish Language Route. It takes students along Spain's famous pilgrimage of the Way of St. James, also known as the Camino de Santiago. Students can choose one of 5 different routes depending on their native language. The path will then take the student step by step, learning the Spanish language, as well as seeing some of the historic sites along the Camino de Santiago. The lessons also teach students about Spanish artists, literature, festivals, and local delicacies and cooking. The game is designed using 3D technology as well as Google Earth in order to get a better view of the route. The game makes for a fun way to learn Spanish, as well as learning about the culture and history that follows the route of St. James, all the way to the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela.
And we have a late-breaking story to report to you about religion and the presidential election. The top Democrat in the U.S. Senate, Harry Reid, is saying that he agrees with the charge that Mitt Romney has, quote, sullied, unquote, the Mormon faith. Both Reid and Romney are Mormons, and another Mormon, Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz, is saying Reid's comments are shameful and way, way out of bounds. No comment from either presidential campaign. Expect more in the days ahead, and expect more currents after the break. The saint known as the Little Flower is also known for her little way, a way of love. Next. Welcome back, I'm Liz Faublas. In Paris, an exhibit inside the City of Light's most famous cathedral shows the inner flame of one of France's best-known saints. And as we hear from Rome Reports, it's drawing huge crowds in the process.
About 7 million people who visited the Notre Dame Cathedral have enjoyed this exhibit on Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, the French saint who is also the youngest doctor of the Catholic Church. It wasn't easy to plan the exhibit. Saint Thérèse, also known as the Little Flower, died at the age of 24, but she managed to leave quite a mark. To chart her life, organizers focused on her message, including her illnesses and suffering.
The exhibit has a message, which is one of joy. Therese was a very happy woman. It carries a message of serenity and confidence in God, and this is reflected in the images, a quiet and joyful surrender in Jesus.
She brings consolation to people. She brings graces, she brings conversion, she brings healing. And she brings healing to the people who suffer like she suffered. But she brings something else, which is more stronger, which is what we're trying to bring, which is a message not only of hope, but of courage.
We've been very surprised by the public's reaction. We know she had global impact, but we didn't know or even imagine that visitors from all over had heard of her. What's ironic to many is that the short life of Saint Thérèse of Lisieux wasn't that extraordinary. She didn't create an order. She didn't preach to thousands of people, nor was she understood by those around her. She did, however, create the so-called Little Way, which was a type of spiritual journey based on her trust and love for God. The exhibit includes 36 panels that represent the different types of love Thérèse experienced. For example, the love within her family. She was one of 4 sisters and was close to her father. Her mother died when she was still a child. Then the love she felt for the Virgin Mary, which also marked her life and her experiences. Then there's also the saints who inspired her the most, like St. John of the Cross, St. Teresa of Avila, Mary Magdalene, St. Francis of Assisi, St. Cecilia, and St. Joan of Arc, patron saint of France.
Therese had an inner fire. She loves everything. She wants everything. Inside the church, she wanted to be loved. And this strong inner passion is what we use to title the exhibit, The Burn of Love.
The aim of this exhibition is really to go to places where Therese hasn't gone, to prisons, to hospitals, to places where people suffer.
The idea to have this exhibit came from the Association of Friends of Thérèse and Carmel of Lisieux. It will eventually be taken to hospitals and even prisons, and perhaps next year it will also make its way to Rio for the coming World Youth Day.
And stay tuned, more currents after the break. Catholic Boy Scouts of Brooklyn gathered to honor a special group, and we join them next.
Kids really look forward to coming to church because they really see it as a community, just like Scouts is.
Finally tonight, every year the Bishop of Brooklyn is the host of a celebration of Catholic scouting in the diocese. On Thursday, all assembled so that some special people could be honored, and we were there.
Tonight we're at the El Caribe restaurant for the annual Boy Scout Catholic Committee awards that are given to the Catholic Scouts. Boy Scout is brave, clean, and reverent as part of the creed, and so they fit right into our Catholic understanding of bravery, of being morally upright.
In our parish, we all sit in the same place at church, and we all, you miss people who aren't there, and so the kids really look forward to coming to church because they really see it as a community, just like Scouts is.
I always remember camping. Camping was always the best. When I go out and camp, cook for myself, I learned how to survive on my own, to exist without no help.
It was a tremendous experience for me to grow with friends, to have examples of adults that were really worthy examples. I mean, really fine men who taught young people how to be mature adults, and also values that were transmitted. First of all, values about human values, about taking responsibility, taking your own initiative.
There's so many parallels between scouting and our Catholic faith, and the dedication and the perseverance that are instilled in the young people, whether it be girls or boys, and also so many of the different mottos and slogans that are part of scouting in terms of be prepared and the sense of the scout law.
I have been part of the Boy Scouts. Unfortunately, I never made it to Eagle Scout, but I've had a lot of good experiences with scouting, and they have led me to my position as an inspector in the New York City Police Department and helped me for leadership abilities.
We also, like to recognize role models such as Stephen McDonald. Stephen has come up to retreats and been phenomenal at speaking at the retreats. I mean, he's been an inspiration to the kids.
I'm not a scout, but I've benefited from Boy Scouts in America. Many of the people that have helped me come back after the shooting were scouts, and I know how the good leaders that they are, and they were an inspiration to me in my recovery after being hurt.
All of those qualities that scouts have are qualities that we want in good Christian young adults, and so it builds up the community of believers in so many ways, even among scouts who aren't even Catholic, who have a sense of duty and responsibility and preparing themselves and taking care of the needs of others.
And that's all for tonight. Be sure to join us on Wednesday for the latest on the campaign trail as we move closer to the November elections. Until then, visit us online at currentsandwhite.net. You can also connect with us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublas. Tonight, we leave you with more from last week's scouting dinner in Brooklyn. Thank you for watching, and have a good night.